Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Catalyst session, Staffing the Writer's Room. I'm your host and the Director of Mentoring and Partnerships for the Catalyst Institute, Jennifer Plotsky. And our guest today is Jen Grisanti, international speaker and acclaimed story and career consultant at Jen Grisanti Consultancy, also writing instructor for Writers on the Verge at NBC, and a former 12-year studio executive. Her last studio job was VP of Current Programming at CBS Paramount. Welcome, Jen. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you so much. And in addition to everything that I just mentioned, you are also the author of 3 books, one of which we'll be celebrating in our newsletter next month. So would you tell our creators about the second edition of the TV Writing Toolkit, How to Write a Script That Sells?
Yes, I wrote this was one of the first. I wrote this at the same time that I wrote my book Storyline Finding Gold in Your Life Story. And what this started as was a bunch of my workbooks that I gave away at my seminars that a lot of people, I got such tremendous feedback from where the writer store said to me, why don't you put all your workbooks into a book? So that started TV Writing Toolkit in 2011. And then I recognized that since 2011, I have so many more story tools and show breakdowns and updates on my pitch document and my Bible formula and my pitch formula. So I decided to do a second edition where I could put everything that I have learned between then and now into the book so that that could contribute to people getting information with the second edition of TV Writing Toolkit.
Wow, incredible.
Mhm.
um, so we love checking in with our guests on this next question. Do you think the major networks and streaming platforms are ready to begin buying indie TV shows directly from content creators?
I do. I do think everything comes down to relationships. So I think in this day and age when we all went to the internet and we're being connected in a way that we've never been connected before and access is there. So I believe that relationships has always been a huge part of that happening. So I still think relationships are everything. And then, of course, having content that can get to that outcome is pivotal as well. But I think the world is opening up, and the potential is there like it has never been before. So I think this is exciting for everyone.
That is excellent. Yes, I agree. It's an exciting time, and everything keeps changing, and it's incredible and fascinating to watch. Um, so, from the executive perspective, has the writer's path to getting staffed changed at all in recent years? As we're talking about the industry changing and moving forward, has that process changed at all?
I In my experience, now I was a studio executive for 12 years, as you mentioned, at CBS, Paramount, and Spelling Television, and I staffed 15 primetime shows. So at that point, it was all about having an agent manager, having, 3 to 4 strong scripts so that you could be considered for as many openings as possible. And then it was getting out there and doing your meetings. I think the difference now, from what I can tell, the difference now is social media
Mm.
is connecting people in a very big way. And I think people are doing their own writer communities. So you look at places like LinkedIn, you look at places like Twitter, and suddenly writers are having this access to showrunners and creators that they've never had before. So I think it is learning how to make the best of that access through your posts and through your comments so that you can create relationships. And I do think that social media has changed that. Now, it will always be as well, who do you know? What are your relationships with them? I believe that showrunners do tend to look at other writers and say, do you know any strong writers that I'm not aware of?
Mm.
But then the traditional aspect is still there of the current programming executive and the development executive doing the vetting process and then sending the top choices to the showrunners. So it's all still going on, but there are different ways that you can get in and have a voice that can get you a seat at the table.
That's incredible. Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
news. So how or where do showrunners go about seeking a staff?
So the way it's run. So I was a current programming executive, and what that means when you're a current programming executive is that development develops the pilot sells and goes to series. Then the current program executive, it is their job to help staff the writers, help staff the directors, work with the writers and executive producer, showrunner, from story concept to outline to script to screen. So they are still a very heavy part of the process. And then it again, I think writers need to recognize, like, when you are on a writing staff, it's so much like when you're in love and you think marriage is gonna the work stops, and you recognize when you get there that that's when the work begins. It's the same thing with the writing staff. Like, you think, oh, once I get on staff or once I get an agent or manager, then I can breathe. And it's like,
Right,
no, the work begins when
right.
you are on staff. And as soon as you are putting the work in and making relationships and making contacts, then that contributes to the future when showrunners will remember, oh, I had that script coordinator or that staff level person that I loved on
Mm,
a past show. Let me see where they are now. So you certainly have that aspect. Then you have your executive aspect. Then you have your social media aspect where the showrunner may creator may have started making their own context, and then, like, if that is the case, then they still have to have that script read by the current programming executive, the development executive, because you have to get everybody on board with saying the same name. So a huge part of the staffing process is the recognition that it takes a village for
mm,
something to happen. But then when it happens, it is so rewarding and fulfilling when you find the right writer that
mhm.
you know is going to be a perfect addition to the staffing situation.
Got it. Excellent. Okay. Um, so in terms of those meetings and landing the job, what materials or experience or advocates does a writer need to have to land that initial meeting?
Well, I think, like, how can the idea of, I love Oprah's quote, preparation is when, or luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I love that. So
Right.
I think it is recognized. And, like, I can tell you, when I was in staffing meetings, the things that would make a meeting stand out to me were when a writer was prepared, they asked questions, it was clear that they did the research, they were aware of what I was working on at the time that our meeting took place, they were aware of past things that I worked on, they offered an opinion on shows that they like and are currently watching. I think those are things that shine. And I think confidence and passion, and I would say things that I would notice, like, with meetings that all the way through were like, all right, I'm putting this person at the top of my list, had to do with the opening of the meeting being strong, just as strong as the end of the meeting.
Hmm.
Because I think so many writers get in their heads and they think or fear if they're reading the room that they didn't meet expectations. So then their energy goes down. And so I always encourage writers to think about when you're going into a meeting, what are three things, only three things, think about that are your major marketing points that you do not want to leave that meeting without authentically bringing up. Because if you can just think of three things that you want to bring up and you know you did that, then you can view it as a successful meeting and end it strong.
Right. And so to piggyback on that, what in that general meeting, what qualities or skill sets are being evaluated? Or in the general meeting or versus for a specific show, I guess.
Well, again, I do think so many writers don't understand the idea that everyone in the entertainment business needs to feel good about the work they're doing and like they're making an impact.
Hmm.
So I think the best thing a writer can do to prepare for a meeting and make an impact is to look at the work of the showrunner and find moments in the work that really resonate and bring those up in the meeting and mention how much you loved this character dynamic or this story beat or this specific episode and be detailed with why did you love it. So then you're finding common ground, which is what it's all about. You're looking for common ground so that the showrunner gets that you understand the show, you understand the concept, you get the engine, and you have a well of story that could connect to it. So that is all you're doing in these meetings. Is I think people again get so nervous, and it it's just recognizing we want it. I remember when I was doing these meetings, like we want the meeting to work as
Right.
much as the writer wants the meeting to work. And so I think going in prepared, asking questions, having an opinion, sharing what you love that that person does, then you're going to make an impact.
Gotcha. And this next question, I think, also sort of goes hand in hand with that, and you've just kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of preparation for a particular series. What are the expectations an executive has for the writer to have researched prior to that meeting? You just touched on that a little bit, like, what they've worked on before and having, that kind of knowledge. Is there anything in addition to that?
Yes, I'm happy you said that. So something I did want to add that is so important that I didn't bring up. So I have writers do this exercise called logline for your life, and it's a short way of looking at your story through the logline formula. So if you write down, say, 5 to 10 log lines for your life before you go into a meeting, and you think about, all right, these log lines are specific to my marketing points for this series. So, what's in my background that could connect with this specific series are these things. And I think so many writers undervalue that. They leave a meeting and they're like, oh my God, I wish I had brought up this or I wish I had brought up that. So I think it is so important when you're going specifically up for a show and you know the show and you have an opinion on the show and you also have a background that merits why you would be the perfect writer for this show, then you have to be clear on presenting this so that the showrunner gets it. I'll never forget Moira Curlin saying to me when we were staffing media. Um, she said, when I'm having 15 writer meetings a day, she said, the thing that I remember the most is their personal stories. So I think understanding how to, and again, with your personal stories, you don't want to go on rambling on and on forever. You just want to have a succinct way that gets the point across, like your log line, and maybe expanding on it a little bit. And so that they get, yes, you would be the perfect writer for this show.
Well, you just answered two of my questions in one. My next question was, does a writer's perspective or personality hold as much weight as the writing itself? And I think that you just touched on that and the previous question as well. So that's good to know.
Well, and I think the personality, this is something that I love that you had that question. So, the personality you have to recognize, I think a great thing for so many writers to realize is that many writers get fired. That is a part of working in Hollywood. It happens, and you just have to recognize that sometimes the personality doesn't match, and that's okay. So then you learn and you take from it and you move forward and you don't carry it and you don't talk about it in future meetings because you're feeling insecure about what happened. You just let it go. So personality is a very big factor. When I know, again, when I would have like, I'd read like 300 scripts at staffing season, I'd probably have 100 meetings. I Personality wise, I was really looking for, does the writer, it's like I was a matchmaker. I was thinking about, does the writer have the type of personality that my showrunner's not going to throw them out the window after 10 hours in the room? So, yes, personality weighs
It
in. It
counts.
does. Yeah.
Well, actually, that brings me to my next similar question. Since you're talking about this now, I'll go ahead and ask you, what are other, in addition to possible personality clashes, what are other common reasons an executive would let a writer go before the next season? Or how does a writer earn their place to return for the next season?
So, I would say one of the most common things that's so hard with newer writers is because they're polar opposite is the two most common reason newer writers are not brought back is because they either speak up too much or they don't speak up enough.
Hmm.
So I think a very big thing to learn in the writer's room is understanding the temperament of the room, understanding when it is a great time for you to pitch something out and when it is a great time for you to be quiet and just listen. I remember a mentee of mine who's now a massive name in the business. So I love, seeing and remembering this conversation that we had. She sent me an email saying, Jen, I'm on my first staffing show. This is my experience. I went to the table. I had an idea. The room shot it down. Suddenly, at the end of the day, somebody else came up with the same idea who was an upper level writer and everybody loved it.
Uh,
And, I said, welcome to the world of
yeah.
being a writer. This is what it is. So you have to look at a situation like that and you have to look at it with gratitude because it's giving you information. It's telling you, all right, I'm on to something. Maybe they weren't ready to hear it from a newer voice. And it was more important that a seasoned person offered it maybe in a different light or expanded on it in a way that the newer writer didn't. So it's just learning and going, all right, that came from me. No one can take that away. Like, what comes from you. And there will come a time, I can tell you as a current programming executive who climbed the ranks all the way from assistant to vice president, that there is a large part of that career process where you are not going to get credit for your work.
Mm,
And then there's a day that suddenly the earth, the moon, and the sun come together, and
line.
suddenly your voice is being heard, and your notes, you are getting credit for your notes. And again, that's just part of being in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, that's wonderful. How inspiring. That's wonderful. Um, so, how many people are would be staffed on an average comedy or drama? And in addition to that, what writing strengths might an executive seek to balance that, to create that balance within the room?
So I can tell you from staffing 15 shows that that could vary from show to show. Like you could start, it all comes down to the first thing is the budget. So
Mm,
you're looking at the budget and you're going, all right, there's room for 2 upper level, 1 lower level. Well, then if have you meet the top 25 writers that you think are right, and let's say there's a lot of mid-level writers. Well, then that one upper level slot may suddenly go to 2 mid-levels or 1 mid-level and 1 lower level, dependent on who you meet with and what would be a good fit. I would say on average on dramas and comedies, you're looking, depending on it, is it a new show that you're staffing or a returning show? With a returning show, it's dependent on how much of the staff is returning. With
mm,
a new show, you could be looking at anywhere from 4 to 8 writers with a brand new show. Whereas on a returning show, you're more looking at like 3 to 6 slots that could be open or less, depending on if the staff worked and there might only be 1 or 2 slots open. So I think it all comes down to the budget, but mixed with the quality of writers that are coming in. You could again have the current executive or the showrunner, they're the ones that make the decision, so they'll look at and go, all right, this is what the room needs. But then when I was known for getting my showrunners to meet with a lot of writers, so that could change the makeup of what they thought they were, depending on the personality and the level. So it's all about doing your best to sell your best marketing points, so
mhm.
that even if that showrunner isn't looking for someone at your level, either they're going to make a change or they're going to make a note that in the future they want to bring you back.
Gotcha. Understood. Great. Well, you have an exciting story therapy event coming up. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. I'm very excited. So, story therapy is all about the inside story. So, when I started uh, as a writing instructor, at the same time I started my business 13 years ago, I became the writing instructor for writers on the Verge at NBC. And I've been there for 13 years. And what I recognized when I was there is that there were so many writers that don't get into these programs. So that led me to come up with my own Storywise teleseminar that helps give writers the exact same thing that I'm teaching in Writers on the Verge, so that they can get the access and the value of information. And story therapy is the concept, the angle for this year. And what I recognized with story therapy is from watching all of the tremendous work that's being done on streaming, network, and film, that more and more we're becoming interested in the inside story. More and more, part of what is driving story is the internal mystery. And I think the dilemma that so many writers face is they don't know how to utilize the backstory in the
Mm.
present story. So, what I'm doing in story therapy is giving them tools to understand that based on five top shows that I've selected that are doing it at a very high level. So, we're going to look at the strategies that these shows are utilizing in one film I'm actually doing this year as well. And we're going to look at how they're telling the inside story and how it's influencing the external story in the present plot. And that starts on February 15th.
Oh, wow. Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for spending your time with us and all of your insight and knowledge and experience and taking us, through this process. It's great to learn about, and it's really fascinating. Thank you so much.
Ah, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your tremendous questions. I loved it.
Oh, wow. Thank you. This is what everyone needs to know. So thank you
Yes.
for all of this really great insight. And we look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Thank you. I look forward to it as well.
Brought to you by the Catalyst Story Institute.